If you like our video, click the subscribe button to subscribe to our channel and get easy access to new content. To see our full suite of ad-free video courses and training materials, visit us at teachucomp.com. A standalone macro in Access is a program you create in a visual environment that runs a series of actions in a specified order. As opposed to embedded macros in Access, standalone macros appear as separate objects under the macros category in the navigation pane of a database. Macros automate database tasks in Access. For example, a standalone Access macro could check which value a user has selected in a form field, and then open a corresponding report based on the value of the field. When you write macros in Access, you need to know both the actions, what to do for each step in the macro, and each action's arguments, which are additional settings that specify exactly what you want each action to do. To make macro creation easier, Access has a visual macro design window. To create a new macro in the macro design window in Access, click the Macro button that appears in the Macros and Code button group on the Create tab of the ribbon. Doing this opens the Macro Design window and shows the Design tab of the Macro Tools Contextual tab in the ribbon. Next, select the actions the macro will perform when it is run. You can select the first action from the drop-down that appears in the Macro Design window. After selecting the action, then enter the action's arguments. These action arguments are the additional settings the selected action needs to be evaluated or to function. Enter the arguments into the field shown within the action. Depending on the type of macro you are creating, the arguments will vary considerably. Some actions simply need more arguments than others. Many have default arguments you can change as needed. Some arguments have no default value but require you to enter an expression instead. Also, some arguments are required for an action to work. For example, if you select the Open Form action, then you must specify the name of the form to open. If you hold your mouse pointer over one of the fields in the action arguments, Access shows help about the currently selected argument in a tooltip. You can click the Tell Me More link in this tooltip to show the associated help file for the action or argument. This makes entering the actions and arguments easier by telling you what information is required and showing you examples. To remove an action from a macro in Access, click the Delete button, which looks like a small X in the upper right corner of the selected action. To complete the macro in Access, continue selecting actions from the Add New Action drop-down below the current action and set the arguments those actions require. After selecting all the actions and arguments needed for the macro, save it so you can run it in the future when needed. To save the macro in Access, click the Save button in the Quick Access toolbar. Then enter the name for the macro into the macro name field in the Save As dialog box. Give it a name that will help you remember its function within the database. Then click the OK button in the Save As dialog box. One way to run a macro in Access is to right-click the name of any macro in the navigation pane, and then click the Run command in the pop-up menu that appears. Alternatively, double-click the name of a macro in the navigation pane to run it. Alternatively, to run an Access macro, open it in the Macro Design window, and then click the Run button in the Tools button group on the Design tab of the Macro Tools Contextual tab in the ribbon. To edit a macro in Access, right-click the name of the macro to edit in the navigation pane. Then select the Design View command in the pop-up menu that appears to open the Macro Design View window. In this window, change the macro actions and arguments as needed, and then save it again. After creating the macro and ensuring it works the way you want it to work, you can then add the macro to a command button's on-click event in a form. This lets the users of the form click the command button to run the macro when using the database in the future. Remember to click the subscribe button to see more of our videos. Get ad-free courses at teachucomp.com.